Welcome. I'm Stephen Winnick of the American Folklife Center of the Library of Congress. For many years, we've presented the Homegrown Concert Series featuring the best in folk music and dance from around the world. In the year 2020, because of the global pandemic, we shifted to producing an online video concert series, which we call Homegrown at Home. So 2021 was our second year of Homegrown at Home concerts. We were very happy to present a program of Shaker spirituals, and this video is the second part of an interview with Brother Arnold Hadd and Kevin Siegfried, which goes along with that concert. By way of introduction, I'll mention that the United Society of Believers in Christ's Second Appearing, more commonly known as the Shakers, emigrated from England and settled in revolutionary colonial America in 1774. And from their inception, the Shakers composed thousands of songs, dances, hymns, and anthems, which were an important part of Shaker worship. Sabbath Day Lake Shaker Village in Maine, established at the height of the Shaker movement in the United States in the 18th century, is the last active Shaker community in the country. And one of that community's members, Brother Arnold Hadd, actively carries on the oral tradition of singing Shaker songs, which goes back over 200 years. So we are very happy to have Brother Arnold with us. Welcome back for part two.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brother Arnold has been collaborating with our other guest, Kevin Siegfried. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And I'll just say that Kevin's choral arrangements of Shaker songs are frequently performed by modern vocal ensembles, and Kevin also does archival research and work in the Sabbath Day Lake Library, as well as with us at the Library of Congress. He sees his choral arrangements as a form of musical stewardship of this important American musical tradition. So our concert offered a glimpse into the transmission, history, and meaning of Shaker song, and the first part of the interview, which was conducted expertly by Kevin, allowed us to delve far deeper into the history. So without further talk from me, let's welcome back Brother Arnold Hadd and Kevin Siegfried.
So, brother, in the first part of this oral history, we were able to delve into some of your early history, how you came to Sabbath Day Lake, and some of the early history of the Shakers and early Shaker music. And I wonder if we can continue in this second part to just delve particularly into the main Shaker repertory of songs, things that are unique to both the Alfred and Sabbath Day Lake communities, and maybe illustrate some specific details about the people who have given life to these songs and helped bring them to this day and what they mean to you now. We were able to end part one with simple gifts. So that brought us to the 1840s, and jumping in here, mid 19th century. Could we pick it up with a song, "O Holy Father," by Alonzo Gilman?
One of the most beautiful songs in the repertoire, a very small song. And we now use it as a benediction, basically in meeting on Sundays to close meeting off. And everybody sings in a kind of a hushed tone. It's not sung loudly. But it is one of the most haunting songs from one of the most haunting believers in 19th century Maine Shakerism. It was received by Joseph Alonzo Gilman, and he was called Alonzo. That's something I don't think most people know about Shakers. We do not like duplication of names. So if you came into a family and your name was Joseph Alonzo, and there were already three Josephs, you were not going to be allowed to be called Pat. You would be called Alonzo. And likewise, if they already had an Alonzo, then they would say to you, okay, what do you want to be called? What's your name? That was the case. Sister Frances, she was actually Evangeline Annie. And we already had an Eva and we already had an Annie. So they said to her when she was 10 years old, okay, what would you like to be called? And just before she became a Shaker, her mother had her baptized into Catholicism, and the religious name she was given was Frances. Mm-hmm. So that's how she became known as Frances. So that's the way things went around. So Alonzo, anyways, had a rather interesting life. He came in as an adult, so he had some conviction of faith. They needed help up at Poland Hill, which was our North family, and they recruited him from Alfred to come up and help. And at first, he seemed to be doing well as the second elder or the junior elder of the family. And when the elder was transferred elsewhere, he became the elder. And something went peculiarly wrong with him. And the family lost a lot of confidence. And Elder Otis, in writing to the Lebanon ministry, said, Elder Alonso is sick of bed, and most of the family hope he never rises again. So he had really lost the confidence of the people. Mm. So what he did is he decided he was going to get even. And what he did is he started stealing. Now, he didn't steal money because they didn't have much money. But what they did have was money that could be used to be buying equipment and things like that. So he would buy wheelbarrows and shovels and all. And he had a friend, and he had the friend take it away. So what he was going to do is he was going to leave the Shakers and open up a dry goods store with all of the ill-gotten gain and make his money that way. Well, they removed him from the eldership and took him back to Alfred, and he was obstinate. He would do nothing, and the family always had it with him. And Shakers really don't, I mean, the covenant is very clear about what we can and can't do, but Shakers really had a hard time with that. And so they always wanted the redemption of the individual. And so he was labored by the elders, he was labored with his brothers, and finally the family just said, we've had it. And he was told that the family had united in their belief that he had to go. So he said, fine. And he went back to his room, and he finally broke down, and he goes to the elders, he confesses his sins, they get all of the goods back, and which they can then liquidize and give the money back to Poland Hill. But he really isn't happy. And he's very depressed. And one day he just wandered off and walked into the pond and committed suicide because he didn't know how to swim. So a very, very unhappy man who had a very unhappy end, but he left us something far greater than most people who lived exemplary lives. So this is it. Oh, Holy Father. O Holy Father, I will be a child of peace and purity, for well I know thy hand will bless the seeker after righteousness.
And do you normally just sing that song one time through?
That song, Sister Mildred, that's how she learned it at Alpha.
That's how she sang it. Yeah.
I think it's just too short. It destroys the rhythm of it, unless you just took the whole thing through and sang the entire thing twice.
Yes, right.
We
right.
don't. We
but
just
that's always been the tradition with that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. That's a song I've never arranged for choir, but it maybe needs to do it to the top.
I will have
to the top of that list.
That could have such power, Kevin.
It could. I just jotted it down. So there we go. So there are a couple people that are really, when you look at the history of the main Shaker community, that really stand out, and it's Elders Marianne Gillespie and Elder Otis Sawyer, who were in the leadership along with Elders Hester and Adams for it was a 25-year period, the three of them. And the relationship between these people is really remarkable. Elders Marianne and Elder Otis were both prolific in their output of songs. And I mean, astonishingly prolific, as I've been coming across them in the manuscripts, and had a special relationship with one another, seemed to almost just goad each other on in terms of their output, and had a great deal of respect for one another. And so I'm curious if you could just talk to us a little bit about these figures who really do loom large over the second half of the 19th century at Sabbath Day Lake and Alfred, and then we'll get into some songs of theirs.
Well, Elder Otis came to the North family, which we call Poland Hill, when he was 13, being placed there because he had lost his parents. And he and James Wakefield were contemporaries, and they were the two young men in the family who they had set their whole hopes on as being the next leaders, being the elders and the trustees. When there came a crisis in the main ministry and they needed somebody else to go in, Otis was the one chosen to leave. But he never really left. That's the thing. Again, people don't understand about Shakers. Where you are a Shaker, you're made. That's it. You make a Shaker in the community you were brought in. So if you were to be transferred anywhere else, your home was not there. Your home was where you started. Elder Otis was a Poland Hill boy, and he always was. And that's Poland Hill actually lasted much longer because of his influence, and he would not let that community die. So he was stalwart right from the beginning. Nobody had any doubt this is the man who's going to be the man. And he had musical ability from his teens, really. In 1859, Maine finally got its full status back in the Shaker world. And in fact, Canterbury had been pleading with Mount Lebanon to let them out of it because they felt they were going to get stoned anytime they came to Maine. That's how little they would listen to them. So they finally relented, but they had to buy out. And so they had to send people from New Hampshire to help fill up places here in Maine. And Marianne and Hester came. Eldest Hester came to be first and Marianne her second. And Eldest Marianne was just a very lively soul. She was short and round and just had life. Children loved her. Eldest Hester was always patrician and dyspeptic. And you never hear a good word really about her from anybody. And she hated it here. She just hated Maine. There's this horrible letter she wrote to her former kindred in New Hampshire after she got up about the wastelands of Maine and the exile she was feeling from home, all of that. So, but Marianne and Elder Otis, they really had a bond. And she could not write Shaker letteral notation. So she would receive a song, write it down, and then he would provide the lettering for her. So they were really collaborating, and you think, but the funny thing is, and I know you know this, Kevin, but Eldest Marianne was lively, and her spirit was so alive. And all of her songs, her sad songs are lively. Elder Otis, on the other hand, couldn't write a happy song if he wanted to. Everything was woe is me, burden, burden, burden. Well, and he had every reason to, because everything was falling apart underneath him. And he had all of these distrust. Well, he had to throw, one of the trustees had to be thrown into prison for embezzling. Another one was released and removed for embezzling. And then you had all the future prospects leave or die on him. He was in a mess. He was just in a mess. And he felt very alone and very besieged. And if it weren't for the two sisters, he would have been. So they used to call themselves the Trio Ministry. And they got all of their support, all of their encouragement from each other, not from anybody else. And
in terms of the life they led, they were they were the active ministry for Alfred, which is to the south near the border of New Hampshire, really. And then at New Gloucester, which is up the road to the north, they were back and forth constantly between these two communities.
They were. I mean, normally you would spend approximately 6 weeks. However, if you had problems, and there were always problems, then you'd have to pick up and move and go up and see what was going on.
Yes, and you can see how much they moved around in the manuscripts as you go through, because it's just like, Otis will sign his name, and today he's June 4th he's in Alfred, and then the next week you see sign his name. A new song is in Sabbath Day Lake. So it's just it seems like it was often more frequent than 6 weeks.
Right, it was.
Yeah, definitely.
Very much so. I mean, the sojourn was supposed to be, but of course, if you have a crisis, you got to deal with a crisis again. Say, well, you got to wait another 3 weeks for this. So.
And they made that trip via carriage, train?
Mostly train. by that time period, it was mostly trained.
So the Arise and Sing, a song by Eldris Marianne.
Because it survives in the oral tradition, we know it, because otherwise, there are two songs that we sing in this fashion. The other one was received by Eldris Anna White at North Family Mount Lebanon. But first stanza is just normal, but the second stanza starts out really little, and then it builds and builds till you get to the fullness. And that doesn't appear in the manuscript. You have to know that. So there are, heaven knows how many songs we don't really know how we're singing them right or not. We don't have the interpretation, but this one we have. And this really embodies everything that Eldris Marianne is all about, right? It's arising, it's singing, it's going forth, it's going to be joyful. The life of the gospel is a joy. And she wants to instill that in everything that she sings. So here we go. Arise and sing of mother's love, the richest treasure I know of. It fills my soul with life and zeal, her overcoming power I feel. Arise and sing of mother's love, the richest treasure I know of. It fills my soul with life and zeal, her overcoming power I feel. 'Tis like a sunbeam of pure light, it guides my spirit day and night. And as an angel robed in white, her love is my protection. 'Tis like a sunbeam of pure light, it guides my spirit day and night. And as an angel robed in white, her love is my protection.
And as as musicians would notate something like that, that B section really begins pianissimo. And by the time you get to it, you have a gradual crescendo over it. In the end of it, it's fortissimo. So double forte by the end, I think is the implied performance tradition with that.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as you know, that really goes back to
and that's the only way. I mean, it's never gone out of our tradition.
And and you're exactly right. It does not appear in the manuscripts with that indication.
Mm-hmm.
So to contrast that with a song by Otis Sawyer, in which, as you say, often have a very different quality. The song "Bow Down, O Zion,"
mm-hmm. Kind of that early laboring kind of song you'd think from the 1820s and 1830s, which is still holding on in his repertoire, because it just serves him well. And if you look at the words, they fit a lot more than they would fit to Eldris Marianne's major kind of happiness.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Bow down, O Zion, and pray unto heaven, that God in his mercy return unto thee. Bow down, O Zion, and pray unto heaven, that God in his mercy return unto thee. Oh, fall on the rock, each one, and be broken, that God in his mercy return unto thee. Oh, fall on the rock, each one, and be broken, that God his anointing may pour upon thee.
Elder Otis certainly was a master of the minor song, and as you say, definitely harkens back to the early Shaker song, and with just a real depth, often mournfulness to those songs. Which I'm very drawn to, I have to admit, but that just says something about me. I think one thing that you've talked to me about before, which I find just is so fascinating, is this and you've already mentioned it, is the relationship between Marianne and Elder Otis, and so you have this situation where, I mean, obviously there's the collaborative spirit there, and Otis is the one who's noting down Marianne's songs, and I've even seen in some of the manuscripts, it's like, you know, Marianne seems to write a hymn, which is actually less common. So most of the things that they were writing were you know, songs that one A, one B section, but then Marianne would write a hymn, and then the next week Elder Otis would write a hymn.
Yeah.
It was like, so you see things like that happen all the time with the two of them. And oftentimes there is even similar, you know, similar words will pop up in songs that arose around a similar time, like just a turn of phrase where one of them would. So there really was just this this intertwining of their lives and their music, and it's a fascinating thing. And then there's, of course, the year 1884, where Elder Otis passes away, and then one sees in these manuscripts the Marianne is receiving these songs from Elder Otis, from the Spirit Land, and I'm wondering if you could just talk about that, because that's a unique aspect of Shakerism. So that in terms of the embrace of that notion of the presence of those who have gone before and those who have passed away, and that it's consistent through really all of Shaker history. It seems like, in terms of the predominance of, you know, Mother Ann receiving a communication, you know, from the angel of light when their ship sprang a leak on their way to the New World, and there's this conversation between there's a different kind of thin veil between our world and the Spirit Land, and I think it's worth some clarification, I think.
Sure. So the Church Triumphant is all around us. And you're right, Mother Ann starts the whole understanding of that when she talked about the angel, but also there'd be young believers who had died, and she would see them and say, I see him traveling from grace to grace, or I see this one, or I see that one. And then very early on, you start having believers that have an understanding of those who have gone on before still being with them. And usually it's encouraging. It's not usually to reprove, but it's usually to encourage and to bless and to keep you on the right pathway. And it's still a part of our life. It's still very, very much around us. And those who can have the eyes to see and hear, you know, blessed are they, because they help us to understand it. When Brother Ted passed, and his passing was as mourned and as unexpected and as unwished for as Elder Otis's had been in his day, Brother Ted would make appearances. And one of those appearances he made was to Sister Mildred, and he was at the head of the Brethren stairs, and Sister Mildred wanted to go out, and she said, Ted, get out of the way, like he was actually there. And she realized after she said that, you know, but she said, he was here for a reason. He wanted us to know something, and he appeared to her again. And he just wanted her to know, to let the family know that all was well. And so everyone's here. I mean, I'm not going to bore you with all these stories I can give you from my own life experiences here with the various people, especially at their passing, and knowing that somebody's coming to take them home. Elder Otis was in that same vein. I will give you this vignette. So he died on a Sunday morning. The family here was anxious beyond belief. They would get a telegram that Elder Otis ate a piece of bread with a 2 by 2 inch piece of bread with a little jam on it, and we rejoice. But then he dies. And Sister Marianne Hill was getting ready to come to meeting, and she looked out and she saw Elder Otis and Elder Joseph walking down the road and going into the ministry shop. And she broke down and she says, he's gone, I just saw them. And shortly thereafter, the postmaster brought up a telegram, and it announced that Elder Otis had indeed died. So the understanding of that, and then you take the personal relationship that Elders Marianne and Elder Otis in particular had. She mourned his death for the whole rest of her life, which was not long because she got tuberculosis. But she couldn't get over it. I mean, every day was a death day for her, basically, thereafter. But what is the song she gets? The very first song, Sweet Summerland. And that's not mournful.
No.
It's as powerful and strong and upright. And so it's like, Marianne had a very different way of expressing grief than most people do. But, when you get at the journals, like once a year, they take all of his clothes out from the built-ins and they wash them and dry them. And they want everything preserved just as if he were still there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the sense of loss was phenomenal. And they decided they were going to try to save her life, and they were going to send her to South Union, which is in Kentucky, and the hopes that the climate would help her and that she would live. And she stopped in Philadelphia. And why did she stop in Philadelphia? Well, she stopped at the Shakers in Philadelphia, but really she stopped because she wanted to see Elder Otis's sister Fanny. So came over to the believer's house, and they had a long conversation, and she was in bed, and she had her last song, which was given by Elder Otis. And she wanted Fanny to know that her brother had given a song. So right to the very end, there was that connection between them.
Yes. And that song, I Walk with Christ in Valleys Low. Could you sing that song?
Sure. I walk with Christ in valleys low, where streams of living waters flow, where saints in garments white as snow rejoice in full redemption. I'll walk with Christ in valleys low, where streams of living waters flow, where saints in garments white as snow rejoice in full redemption. 'Tis here the tree of life is seen, and here in verdure evergreen, Elysian field in beauty's gleam, here in God's new creation. 'Tis here the tree of life is seen, and here in verdure evergreen, Elysian fields in beauty's gleam, here in God's new creation.
And that's in 1987. That's, yes, and three years after Otis's passing.
Right. And then Eldest Hester is going to die in 88. So within those 4 years, the ministry that had been the ministry from 1859 were gone.
Gone, yeah. And another one of the unique things that you have happening in the 1880s is upon the passing of Elder Otis is the need to fill that gap, fill that gap in terms of spirit and guidance and the energy clearly that was there. It was spurred on by those songs and the leadership and whatnot. And so you have this these whole new generation of young Maine Shakers at that point, filling that gap, actually doing that, stepping in along with Elders Marianne, right, in the last years of her life. And so you have that what you've referred to as this final flowering of Shaker song in the 19th century in the Maine communities. Who were some of the people who were involved in that final flowering?
It's like everybody.
Mm.
It really became quite contagious. Elders Marianne reached out the young sisters, and the young sisters are usually people you would refer to once they had left school, as it were, probably from 16 to 25. That's a grouping, and they loved her, and her lively spirit spurred them on. And when one got a song, another one had to get a song. And and I know you have looked at the manuscripts, you can see name after name after name. They all wanted a song. And some of them are good and some of them not so good. They at least got them. And,
Yes.
and here at Sabbath Day Lake, Elders Prudence received many. They're hopelessly mournful mostly. We do still sing one of hers, Precious Faith, I Call Unto Thee. Sister Sarah Fletcher, who is the family deaconess, she received a lot of songs. We still sing two of hers, My Dear Companions, Let's Move On, and Oh, Give Me a Little Love. And at Alfred, you had everybody. Sister Eliza Jeffers had them. Elders Harriet had them. Oh, you just keep going. It's literally everybody in that generation all had them. And they all seem to be really inspired by Elders Marianne. You get the whole character of the song, and you get that whole commitment to faith. And really, in a very strong way, these were all things saying, I am going to stay a Shaker.
Mm-hmm.
And, or the beauty of my home, how could I ever leave it? And these were the songs that they were all receiving.
Mm-hmm.
So it was definitely a commitment. And I want to go back to one thing.
Mm-hmm.
One of Elder Otis's last gifts to the community, which was total and everlasting, was in 1880, he redid the structure at Sabbath Day Lake. And he put in Elder William and Elder Slizzy. He put in Sister Sarah and Sister Amanda as the family deaconesses. And those four people stayed in the positions of power from 1880 until they all died, 1923, 1926, and 1930. So you've got this incredible span with the same group of people who were all trained by Elder Otis, who were all very much of his philosophy and his theology, guarding and trying to guide through two generations of Shakers thereafter to stay the course.
And that carries over into the 20th century Shakers who overlapped with those people, and so you have a direct direct linkage there.
Right, and of course we're living in this house. This is what killed him.
Yes,
to build this house.
Building this house that you're in, which was
that's right. In 1883, this was his last house, and the builders were always doing something wrong. And Elder William would write and say this. So Elder Otis would come over from Alfred. He came over in January to correct whatever they had done wrong the day before. And he went up to his house, the ministry shop, and he slipped on the ice on the granite steps and broke some ribs. And it felt bad, but he went, well, of course, one of the big things with broken ribs is you get pneumonia. And in 1884, there's no hope for you.
Yeah.
And that's just what happened. And so he got pneumonia and died.
Yeah.
But it was this house. So he was seen around this house all the time of its construction. And when they dedicated on Thanksgiving Day of 84, it was really a 2-hour funeral is what it was. It was a total dedication, not of the house, but of Elder Otis.
Yes,
the ministry sisters oversaw it, and they made sure that's what was happening. His songs, his hymns, everything about him. That's what this whole house was about him. So,
yes, and so you live in that memorial. Really, the dwelling house is a memorial building in a way. Yeah, and how about hearing a couple of those later songs? The Mother Has Come with a Beautiful Song.
Okay. I think we need to talk about that song because
absolutely
that is one of those little minor songs which would have passed away. And again, it's only because of one person that song lived, and because of that one person who was so connected to that one person, it lives. And that, again, it's Sister Mildred, and who's above me. When she was a little girl, she was to help Sister Paulina Springer, who was the oldest member of the second family. And she was to make her bed, sweep her room, dust things, keep it clean. And she loved Paulina, and Paulina loved her. And Paulina had these little peppermints, and she would give Sister Mildred one. And when Eldest Harriet found out about that, she put a swift end to that. She said, "You don't take that old lady's candy." And she said, "She offered them to me, Eldest Harriet." So then the next day, Paulina tries to give her one. She said, "She can't, Sister." She said, "Eldest Harriet will die. She won't like it at all." And she said, "We won't tell her." So anyway, but she was just a saint of God, and she loved her to death, and she was the first person she knew who died. And Paulina, as she said, didn't really die of anything special. The life just kind of went out of her, and she knew she was going to die. So the family was all called in to make their farewells, and they do it by age. So Sister Mildred was the youngest one in the family, so she was the last one in the line. And she took Sister Paulina's hand, and Paulina said, "Mildred, I want you to promise me something." And she said, "Oh, I would have promised her anything in the world." And she said, "I want you to promise me you'll make a shaker." And she said, "Well, of course I promised her, but it took me a great many years to find out what I had really promised her." And so that love, Paulina lived because of her song. So when she would sing the song, she sings Sister Paulina. And of course, what happened in turn was when we hear the song, we think of Sister Mildred. And that's the song, that's the last song she heard on earth. Excuse me, as we surrounded her. Shakers aren't supposed to die alone. As we live together, we die together. So when it's possible, when you know the Spirit's leaving, everybody gathers around the person and in prayer. And in her instance, we gathered not only in prayer, but in song. So we sang Mother Is Come.
And this was the song.
Kind of over and over again for her. So anyways, Mother has come with her beautiful song, ho, ho, tally-me, ho. Mother has come with her beautiful song, ho, ho, tally-me, ho. She's come to bless her children dear, ho, ho, tally-me, ho. And Christ your Savior will be near, ho, ho, tally-me, ho. She's come to bless her children dear, ho, ho, tally-me, ho. And Christ your Savior will be near, ho, ho, tally-me, ho. That sounds unusual from the 1890s to still have vocables being incorporated into it. And Sister Mildred said that Paulina told her that she learned it from a little bird.
So it harkens back to the 1840s in a way, that era of manifestations era, when that kind of song with vocables in the B section was very, very common. And there's another song, a later song from that fervent later period, "I Will Come Down the Valley" by Eva Frank, which is a song you still sing. And these are oral tradition songs.
Right. And I don't know whose fancy that caught, that it stayed, that it kept on in the repertoire, because it is a Sabbath Day Lake song. So it was something that Sister Elsie and Sister Elizabeth and all of those would have known and sung. Because Eva was brought up here and was, I think, not so secretly not happy about it, but she was trained as a school teacher. And so she stayed and she taught school for 2 terms, which would then qualify her as being certified, and she could leave. And she had her brother come serendipitously and take her off. And sort of that was the end of her. So when you leave a kind of bad feeling in the people's minds, as that did, it's really odd that the song lasted.
But clearly it struck something, and it also feels like it's a song that harkens back a little bit also.
Right. It's that whole kind of flowing thing that goes, and it must have been almost a walking march, because it just flows so slowly.
Yes.
But it has a lilt and a beauty to it.
Let's hear that song.
Okay. I will come down in the valley, I will be low, I will be low. I will come down where the angels freely their gifts of love bestow. I will come down in the valley, I will be low, I will be low. I will come down where the angels freely their gifts of love bestow. Mother has a blessing free for the meek and the lowly. In obedience I will walk to her testimony. Mother has a blessing free for the meek and the lowly. In obedience I will walk to her testimony.
It's a haunting song as well.
It is, isn't it?
Yes, yes. And I agree with you. Seems like almost a walking slow march. Yes. I think that one of the things that and if we could sort of just switch gears and pull out a little bit in terms of like a wider focus, I often wonder is if, certainly, and I have that experience in going through the manuscripts. One of the outstanding aspects of Shaker Song is this sheer prolific quality, and it makes me think a number of things. For one, I feel like it seems like the Shaker focus has always been in a way on moving forward, and these songs. I feel like at some point there would have been such a saturation of music and songs that people would have stopped, and it would have been they would have said, enough, we have enough songs, so but there was always, it was moving forward. But it also makes me think that the songs are more an outgrowth, almost you could even say a byproduct of the spiritual practice,
right?
And the gripping onto them as material, or as it was not the point. It was really about the songs happened because of something else happening, meaning living the life of a Shaker. And I'm wondering if you could just talk about that, because I've always been intrigued by this notion, just because it's unique in the history of American music. We can just contextualize it within that. We don't see anything like this happening anywhere else in terms of the sheer number of people, because we're never talking about, in terms of all of Shakerdom, we weren't talking about how many thousands of people. I mean, we're not talking about a huge number of people,
right,
but the volume of musical output is really extraordinary. So I guess I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. Well, yeah, a couple of things. One, Sister Aurelia writes down in her journal, reminiscing over her life. And in the 1840s, there were so many songs coming in. One of the elders said, we will not know any song than before this time period. And Sister Aurelia spoke up and says, oh, nay, I know songs, and they'll never leave the repertoire. And she's writing in 1890 and says, and now I'm the only one in the community who knows this song. And I'm going to have somebody else note it for me so it doesn't die altogether. And it was true. So what you had was, and especially what really derails, in the sense, this tradition, is the 1840s during the revival. Songs being given a gift in some appreciable way. Either you have a vision or you have a song, you are receiving a notice from the heavens. And therefore it is like, sort of a gold star on your head. And some of the people would just receive hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of songs. They would just turn around, they'd be giving another song and something else, something else. And the scribes just talked about, we can't keep up with this production level. This is impossible. And also because they saw this as a notice. So when they had somebody, a young person who was receiving hundreds of songs, and they up and leave, they don't understand it. They said, this is not 1 and 1 equaling 2 here. This is something really wrong. Human nature, of course, it's always going to be wrong. But so the songs are going to live because they have purpose and use. And a lot of songs were received because of certain circumstances. And we know that only because we know that. So there's a lot of other songs we just have to assume were also because there was some tension going on in the family, that somebody starts writing a lot of union songs. Let's bring people back together. Let's start thinking about how the oneness of the faith is going to be. And you start thinking about the themes that are always apparent and repeated through probably 40, 50 years. And it's about being obedient. It's about loving God. It's about loving your home. And most importantly, it's about loving one another. So obviously you have the usual grind. It's, people aren't getting along. And we're trying to work that out in the songs to make you appreciate what you're supposed to do. And we also have to realize Shakers don't really have a theology, right? We do not have a creed. Therefore, what we really believe theologically comes out more in our songs than it comes out anywhere else. And your average believer is not going to sit down and read 600 pages of Christ's second appearing. That was for the world who wanted to look at things academically. Shakers wanted to look at things practically. And that comes through in a song. And so you're also encouraged in those songs to think about humility, to think about forgiveness, to think about forgiveness, and all those things that just make life easier and harmonious when you have 40 to 80 people living together and trying to look at all of those problems and how do you solve them. So that's how they could just keep coming in, and no one thought anything of it, because first of all, they wanted something new, and we are looking for something more progressive. And so right up until the 1890s, that's what you get. And then you get we kind of lost it. Frankly, I mean, it was just, we wanted to be like everybody else in the world, and they started to lose the distinctiveness of what it was to be a believer and what it was, how our music looked. For instance, when early Shaker spirituals came out, because Dan Patterson comes in around 1960, and here's a man discovering Shaker music for the first time. He doesn't want to hear 4-part harmony from, the 1905 Canterbury Hymnal. He wants to hear what was the power within the communities that made it last so long. He wants to hear, I feel the need of a deeper baptism. He wants to hear those kinds of songs. He wants to record them, document them, and have them live. And through his relationship, especially with Sister Mildred, he forges that ahead. And that's how early Shaker Spirituals comes out in 63 or 65. And so he took it to Canterbury. No one would even listen to it. They thought it was horrible, and they were ashamed of it and embarrassed. They didn't want their neighbors to know that those were songs of the Shakers because it wasn't worldly enough.
Those older songs, yeah.
They wanted nothing to do with them. They had done with them. That they had given them the benefit from generations before. That wasn't going to benefit them. Whereas what it did at Sabbath Day Lake was say, okay, sister, teach us more. And so she gets to reintroduce her childhood to a new generation of people who were just hungry to hear them and take them up. And so meeting starts to change from these little Canterbury songs, these little, what Sister Mildred calls Sunday school songs, and actually gives more grit, more firmness to the testimony of believers, not only with what we said, but more importantly, with what we sang. So that's where we are today.
And that's where you get that link. I mean, Sister Mildred really being that crucial link, right? In terms of having those songs in her ears, having those memories and stories, and being able to really be the conduit for that early repertoire. You really have Sister Mildred being the conduit for those early songs.
Completely.
Yes, and that is that, and as you say, that brings you to where you're at in the present day in terms of how these songs have remained alive in an oral tradition throughout this time period. Even though there was a period where you said essentially you get to the end of the 19th century, early 20th century, where it essentially the new songs stop, right?
Right.
So the new songs stop, and so that constant fervor that you find in really all of the documented Shaker history through the manuscripts, all of the history, and going back to the beginning, that fervor is there. It stops. But then Sister Mildred forms the bridge to the present day.
Correct.
And the I'm curious to get a sense of as we reach the end of this part 2, just to get a sense of your. We've been through a very unusual 2 years, and the steady flow of visitors that you were used to having at Sabbath Day Lake has obviously, has been required to stop because you've been closed to the public. And yet at the same time, the level of outreach and extra programming and Sabbath Day Lake has just entered into a capital campaign, a very significant one, which is documented on the website. It seems like you are now in the place of reaching more people. Your community is widening beyond your immediate environment, and the reach in terms of the workshops that you've been doing weekly videos. You've been doing workshops in the Shaker Kitchen, and just bringing people into your life and home there. And I'm curious where you are at right now in 2022, and how you're visualizing, your role and your place in the world, and what your dreams are.
In 30 seconds or less.
There's big vision.
Well, I think it's been a good time of reflection for us, actually, to be able to better understand ourselves and our lives. Sister June, before she came to the community, was a librarian, and she has a librarian's disposition. So not having people around has made her as happy as she's ever been in her many years of vocation here. But practically speaking, we can't stay closed forever, and nor do we really wish to. And we're hoping that come upcoming season, beginning in May, we'll be able to open up again and have more people in. We have to define what that's going to be, because we have to be safe and we have to do things practically as well. But we need to support ourselves. So we also need that outreach. And I think it's very important that we have outreach. So I'm willing to give up my time and talents to make sure that happens, that our voice is heard, that the message of the gospel is spread in any way which we can. What we've always been taught is that it's done in very practical terms. Mother Ann said, "You are my epistles to be read and known of men." That the gospel will go to the ends of the earth, not so much by the preaching of the people, but by their good works. So it behooves us in our good works. We can't just get up in meeting and say something and then go out of the door and practice something totally different. And so it is a way of us helping to bridge that gap of isolation for some other people, to bring them close to Sabbath Day Lake. Before the pandemic, we had between 20 and 30 people coming to meeting on Sundays, every Sunday, even in the winter. And so they were feeling that loss of community more than most. So that's why we decided to do the weekly videos, and we'll continue on in that tradition for the foreseeable future. And the workshops, that was Jamie's idea, our office manager, to get things more opened up and try to bring in some income as well, which is much needed too. So it's all about engagement, I guess, and the need to engage people and to let people know about the message. And the message is Shakerism is alive and living at Sabbath Day Lake. And it is our prayer, and it is my fervent belief that that is always going to be the case. How many, I can't tell you, but there will always be a community, because I think if we're called of God and we feel we are, and we're doing God's work and we feel we are, we'll always be sent vocations. So it is our prayer to continue on, and we would ask your prayers for the prosperity and the security of this community as well. And what we send to all of is a universal peace to everybody out there, because, you know, we're all in it together. And one thing we have to remember at this time, especially of great division, is there are no divisions. God has created us all, every single one of us. And therefore, we're all equal in God, and therefore, we're all in one family. And we have to start practicing that unity, which is at the core of believers' lives. And we have to make it not just for us, but we have to make it for all of us.
Beautiful. Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you today.
It's been a pleasure to talk to you as always, Kevin.
And we could go on, of course, for many more hours. But there are obviously many more songs to sing and to talk about, and we'll get another chance to do that another time. And thank you all for tuning in, and thank you to the Library of Congress.